7 years at Thompson and Barrett Digital Marketing had taught me one thing. In this business, loyalty flows up, never down. I'm Olivia Mitchell, and this is the story of how my boss's attempt to replace me backfired in the most spectacular way possible. The Maxwell account needs the new campaign proposal by Friday, Robert Barrett announced, barely looking up from his phone as he strode past my desk. And I want you to bring Jessica up to speed on everything. She'll be taking point on client relations going forward. I glanced at the fresh-faced Jessica Stevens, standing in the doorway of our open-plan office in her perfectly tailored suit. She'd started 3 weeks ago, straight from her MBA program, carrying herself with the kind of confidence that comes from never having faced real failure. Of course, Robert, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I'll make sure she understands all the nuances of the account. He paused, finally looking at me. Good. The Maxwell Group is our biggest client. We can't afford any complications. The threat in his voice was clear. What Robert didn't know was that I'd seen this coming months ago. The signs were all there. Jessica's rushed hiring, the way Robert began excluding me from key meetings, the sudden restructuring of account management roles. Classic setup for my own planned obsolescence. But Robert had made one critical mistake. He'd forgotten how I'd built the Maxwell account from a small digital marketing contract into the agency's crown jewel. He'd forgotten the countless late nights I'd spent learning their business inside and out, the innovative campaigns that had doubled their market share, the personal relationships I'd cultivated with every key decision-maker in their organization. Most importantly, he'd forgotten about Thomas Maxwell EHI himself. I hear Barrett hired some hotshot MBA to replace you, Thomas had said during our secret lunch meeting last month, his blue eyes sharp despite his grandfatherly appearance. Interesting move, considering you're the reason we've stayed with Thompson and Barrett all these years. I'd sipped my water carefully. Business decisions are complex, Mr. Maxwell. He'd laughed, a sound like warm bourbon. Please, it's Tom. And some business decisions are simpler than others. He'd slid a folder across the table, like this one. Inside was an offer that would change everything. Partnership in Maxwell's new venture capital firm, heading their digital strategy division. The salary was triple what I made at Thompson and Barrett. The equity stake was worth even more. You've got vision, Olivia, Tom had said. You understand that digital marketing isn't just about trending hashtags and viral videos. It's about seeing patterns, predicting where markets are heading, and positioning clients ahead of the curve. That's what we need in our investment team. Now, watching Jessica settle into the desk Robert had positioned right next to mine, I thought about the other folder hidden in my desk drawer. The one containing every innovative strategy I'd developed for the Maxwell account over the years. Strategies I'd carefully documented as my personal intellectual property, created outside of work hours. So, Jessica chirped, should we start with the basic account overview? I smiled, remembering how Robert had preened when introducing her as a top MBA graduate with fresh perspectives. He'd conveniently forgotten to mention my own MBA, completed at night while working full-time, or my published articles on digital marketing innovation. Actually, I said, pulling up the Maxwell files, let's start with their market positioning strategy. It's complex. For the next 4 hours, I walked Jessica through layers of data, analytics, and strategic planning that made her eyes glaze over. Robert had hired her to replace me, but he hadn't considered one crucial detail. You can't replace 7 years of expertise with 3 weeks of orientation. This is a lot, Jessica admitted, staring at the campaign metrics spreadsheet. How do you keep track of all these moving parts? Experience, I said simply, and understanding that every number tells a story. My phone buzzed, a message from Tom Maxwell. Board meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m. Everything in place? I glanced at Robert's office, where he was undoubtedly planning my eventual exit. He thought he was orchestrating a smooth transition. He had no idea he was actually setting the stage for his own comeuppance. Just remember, I told Jessica, tomorrow's presentation to the Maxwell board is crucial. They'll expect detailed answers about every aspect of their digital strategy. She paled slightly. I thought you'd be handling that. Oh no, I said, gathering my things for the day. Robert was very clear. You're taking point on client relations now. I'm just here to support the transition. As I left the office that evening, Robert called out, everything set for tomorrow. I turned, offering my most professional smile. Absolutely. Jessica's fully prepared to demonstrate her grasp of the Maxwell account. He nodded, satisfied with what he assumed was my quiet acceptance of my fate. He didn't notice me touching the folder in my bag, the one containing not just my partnership offer from Maxwell Ventures, but evidence of every strategic innovation I'd developed independently. Tomorrow's meeting would indeed change everything, just not in the way Robert expected. After all, as Tom Maxwell liked to say, the best business moves are the ones your competition doesn't see coming until it's too late. And Robert Barrett was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The Maxwell Group's boardroom commanded the entire top floor of their downtown headquarters, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. At 9:45 a.m., I watched Robert adjust his tie nervously as Jessica arranged her presentation materials. Her confidence from yesterday notably diminished. Remember, Robert whispered to her, just stick to the basic overview. Olivia will handle any detailed questions. I suppressed a smile, thinking of the 3 calls I'd received from Jessica last night, each more panicked than the last, as she struggled to understand the complexities of the Maxwell account. Tom Maxwell entered precisely at 10 a.m., followed by his board of directors and their entire digital strategy team. I noticed several venture capital partners among them, faces I recognized from my secret meetings over the past month. Good morning, everyone, Tom announced, taking his seat at the head of the table. Today we're reviewing our digital marketing strategy and discussing some exciting new directions for the Maxwell Group. His eyes met mine briefly. I understand Thompson and Barrett has some personnel changes to announce. Robert stepped forward eagerly. Yes, Mr. Maxwell. We're excited to introduce Jessica Stevens, who'll be taking the lead on your account. She brings fresh perspectives from her top-tier MBA program and... Fascinating, Tom interrupted. And Olivia? What will be her new role? Robert's smile faltered slightly. Olivia will be transitioning to more of a support position, ensuring a smooth handover of responsibilities. I see. Tom's expression gave nothing away. Well then, Miss Stevens, please begin. I'm particularly interested in hearing your thoughts on our emerging market strategy. Jessica stood, smoothing her skirt. Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. I've prepared an overview of our basic digital marketing approach. What followed was painful to watch. Jessica stumbled through generic marketing concepts, unable to answer specific questions about the Maxwell Group's unique market position. When the board's CFO asked about the ROI metrics of the latest campaign, she froze completely. Perhaps, Robert interjected, Olivia can address some of these technical details. Actually, Tom said, I'd prefer to hear Ms. Stevens' understanding of our account. After all, she is taking the lead role. The next hour was a masterclass in professional demolition. Every question revealed another gap in Jessica's knowledge. Every attempt by Robert to intervene was smoothly blocked by Tom or other board members. Let's discuss the Asian market expansion, one board member suggested. Ms. Stevens, can you walk us through the localization strategy Olivia developed last quarter? Jessica glanced desperately at her notes. The localization strategy. Yes, Tom added, the one that increased our Asian market share by 40% in 3 months. Surely Robert ensured you were briefed on that? Robert's complexion had taken on an interesting shade of gray. He knew as well as I did that the Asian market strategy had been my personal project, developed using my own proprietary analysis methods. I have those numbers right here, I offered, opening my laptop. Along with something else the board might find interesting. I connected to the room's display system, bringing up a presentation I'd prepared for this exact moment. While reviewing our strategic documentation, I realized that many of our most successful campaigns were developed using methodologies I created independently, outside of my work at Thompson and Barrett. Robert's head snapped up. What are you talking about? All work product belongs to the agency. Actually, I continued smoothly, I've maintained careful records showing when and where each strategy was developed. My personal research and innovation, done on my own time, using my own resources. I pulled out a folder of notarized documents. My lawyer has reviewed everything. These methods are my intellectual property. The room fell silent as the board members examined the documentation. Robert's attempt to speak was cut off by Tom's raised hand. Very thorough, Olivia. But why bring this up now? I clicked to the next slide, showing the performance metrics of campaigns using my methods versus traditional agency approaches. The difference was stark. Because the Maxwell Group deserves to know exactly what they're getting, or not getting, with this transition. These strategies, these innovations that drove your recent success, they're not part of the standard Thompson and Barrett playbook. They're mine. This is ridiculous, Robert sputtered. You can't just. Actually, she can, interrupted a new voice. Sarah Martinez, the board's legal counsel, had been quietly reviewing my documentation. These development timestamps and registrations are quite clear. Ms. Mitchell owns these methodologies. Which means, Tom added, his eyes twinkling, we need to discuss the future of our digital marketing strategy. All of it. Robert's face showed the first signs of real panic. The Maxwell account represented 40% of Thompson and Barrett's revenue. Without my strategies, without my relationship with the board, I think, Tom continued, we should take a brief recess. Robert, why don't you and Miss Stevens step out for a moment? Olivia, please stay. The board has some questions about your methodologies. As Robert and Jessica were escorted out, I caught a glimpse of their shell-shocked expressions. Through the boardroom's glass walls, I watched them huddle in the waiting area, Robert gesturing frantically as he pulled out his phone. Well played, Tom murmured as the board members chatted among themselves. Though I suspect Robert hasn't realized yet that this is just the opening move. I smiled, thinking of the partnership agreement in my briefcase, ready to be signed. Sometimes the best strategies aren't about the immediate victory. They're about positioning for what comes next. Tom finished, nodding approvingly. Speaking of which, he gestured to his assistant, who began distributing folders to the board members. The Maxwell Group's logo was embossed on each folder, alongside the words, Digital Innovation Division. My new department, once everything was finalized. Through the glass, I could see Robert pacing, probably calling Thompson and Barrett's senior partners. He still thought this was about keeping the Maxwell account. He had no idea that in the next hour, his agency's entire digital strategy department, the one he'd built his reputation on, would be revealed as dependent on methods they no longer had the right to use. Tom stood, addressing the board. "Shall we begin the real meeting?" I opened my laptop, ready to present my vision for Maxwell's digital future. Robert had taught me one valuable lesson over the years. In business, like in chess, the winning move isn't the first one you make. It's all the moves you've planned after that. The next hour, in the Maxwell Group boardroom, redefined the word comprehensive. I walked the board through every aspect of my digital innovation strategy, not just marketing plans, but an entire ecosystem of digital transformation that would position Maxwell Ventures at the forefront of the industry. These algorithms don't just predict market trends, I explained, displaying complex data visualizations. They identify emerging opportunities before they become obvious to traditional analysts. That's how we achieved that 40% growth in Asia, by seeing patterns others missed. The board members were fully engaged, asking detailed questions about implementation timelines and resource requirements. Through the glass walls, I could see Robert still pacing, his phone practically glued to his ear. "And you developed all of this independently?" Sarah Martinez, the legal counsel, asked. "Every bit," I confirmed, pulling up my documented development timeline. Nights, weekends, using my own resources. I knew these innovations were too valuable to simply hand over to an agency that didn't appreciate their potential. Tom Maxwell leaned forward. "I think it's time we brought Robert back in. He should hear what comes next." When Robert and Jessica re-entered the boardroom, the change in atmosphere was palpable. The board members sat straighter. Their expressions hardened. This was the moment business empires pivoted on. "Robert," Tom began, his voice carrying the weight of 40 years in corporate leadership, "we've reviewed Olivia's presentation and documentation. The board has reached several conclusions." Robert tried to maintain his composure, but his tie had come slightly askew. "Mr. Maxwell, if this is about the account leadership transition, I assure you, this is about far more than that," Tom cut in. "We've determined that the majority of Thompson and Barrett's successful strategies for our account were developed using Olivia's proprietary methods. Methods that, as of this morning, you no longer have legal right to use." The blood drained from Robert's face. That's not possible. Our contract." "Your contract," Sarah Martinez interjected, "covers standard agency services. Ms. Mitchell's innovations were developed independently, properly documented, and legally protected. She owns them. Which means," Tom continued, "every campaign, every strategy, every innovative approach that drove our success. You can't legally continue using them without her permission." Robert fell heavily into a chair. "We can develop new methods, in time for the Asian market expansion, the European product launch, the digital transformation initiative." Tom shook his head. "Those projects require immediate action, and from what we've seen today, your new team isn't equipped to handle even basic account management." Jessica, who had been silent throughout, suddenly stood. "Mr. Maxwell, if I could just—" "Ms. Stevens," Tom said kindly, "this isn't about you. You were simply a pawn in someone else's poorly planned game." He turned back to Robert. "Which brings us to the board's decisions." I opened my briefcase and withdrew 3 documents, sliding them across the polished boardroom table. First, Tom announced, "The Maxwell Group is terminating its contract with Thompson and Barrett, effective immediately." Robert's hands began to shake. The Maxwell account wasn't just 40% of the agency's revenue, it was the cornerstone of their reputation. Losing it would send shockwaves through the industry. Second, Tom continued, we're announcing the formation of Maxwell Digital Innovations, a new division focused on digital transformation and investment strategies. Olivia will serve as executive director, with full autonomy to build her team and implement her methodologies. And third, I added, speaking directly to Robert for the first time, I've prepared a comprehensive list of every client campaign that utilized my proprietary methods. Your agency has 24 hours to cease using them or face legal action. Robert's facade finally cracked completely. You can't. This will destroy your reputation? I finished. Your position in the industry? The things you tried to take from me? I smiled professionally. Consider it a valuable lesson in digital disruption. The press release goes out at noon, Tom added. I suggest you use the next 2 hours to prepare your agency's response. And Robert? The board remembers how you handled Olivia's contributions. We'll be watching to see if you try to spin this. As if on cue, phones around the room began buzzing. The industry grapevine was already active. Thompson and Barrett's stock would start dropping the moment the markets caught wind of the Maxwell account loss. Olivia, Tom said, standing to signal the meeting's end, shall we show your new team their offices? I gathered my materials, watching Robert slump in his chair, his career imploding in real time. Jessica had already slipped out, probably updating her LinkedIn profile. One more thing, I said, pausing at the door. Those strategy documents you asked Jessica to review yesterday? They were decoys. Simplified versions I created specifically for the transition. The real innovations, the ones that actually drove our success, those never left my personal files. The look of complete defeat on Robert's face was almost worth the 7 years of watching him take credit for my work. Almost. The next few weeks transformed the industry landscape. Maxwell Digital Innovations became the talk of the business world, with our innovative approaches attracting clients and talent from across the globe. Thompson and Barrett's stock fell 60% after losing not just the Maxwell account, but several other major clients who discovered their campaigns relied on my methods. Robert resigned 3 days after the board meeting, his reputation in tatters. Jessica landed at a smaller agency, hopefully wiser about being used as someone else's corporate pawn. And me. I built the kind of digital innovation powerhouse I'd always envisioned, surrounded by talented people who were valued for their contributions. 6 months later, I sat in my corner office, reviewing applications for our expanding team. A message popped up from Tom. Heard Robert's trying to launch a consulting firm. Should we be concerned? I smiled, thinking of the sophisticated digital strategies we were now developing, far beyond anything I'd created at Thompson and Barrett. No, I replied. He never understood that true innovation isn't about taking credit. It's about creating value. My new team was gathering for our morning strategy session. Through the glass walls of our modern offices, I could see them collaborating, sharing ideas, building on each other's insights. Every one of them had been carefully chosen not just for their skills, but for their integrity and collaborative spirit. The best revenge, Tom had said during our first official board meeting, isn't just succeeding. It's succeeding so spectacularly that your former critics become cautionary tales. Looking at the industry reports on my desk, Maxwell Digital Innovations now valued at 10 times Thompson and Barrett's peak. I had to agree. Robert had tried to sideline me, to take credit for my innovations, to replace me with someone he could control. Instead, He'd inadvertently pushed me to create something far beyond anything he could have imagined. Something built on real innovation, true collaboration, and the understanding that the best business strategies aren't about quick wins or taking credit. They're about building something that lasts. Last week, a junior analyst stopped by my office. "I heard about what happened at your old agency," she said. "How do you prevent something like that here?" I showed her our innovation tracking system, where every team member's contributions were documented and credited, where collaboration was rewarded more highly than individual acclaim, where value was measured not by who could take credit, but by what we could create together. "The truth is," I told her, "the best protection against corporate betrayal isn't revenge. It's building a culture where such betrayal becomes impossible." She nodded thoughtfully, then hesitated. "And the rules about documenting our independent innovations." I smiled, thinking of that leather folder that had changed everything. Document everything. Protect your work. But most importantly, create something so valuable that anyone who tries to steal it only reveals their own limitations. As she left, I glanced at the framed article on my wall. Maxwell Digital Innovations, Redefining the Future of Digital Strategy. Below it sat a small plaque with the words that had become our division's unofficial motto: "Innovation protected is power preserved. Innovation shared is power multiplied." Robert had taught me that lesson, though not in the way he intended. And somewhere out there, struggling to rebuild his career, he was still learning it.